509. We got quite all at once, didn't we?
I will sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. How he left his home in glory for the cross of Calvary. Yes, I'll sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, gathered by the crystal sea. I was lost, but Jesus found me, found the sheep that went astray. Through his loving arms around me, drew me back into his way. Yes, I'll sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, gathered by the crystal sea. He will keep me till the river flows its waters at my feet. Then he'll bear me safely over where the Lord was like to me. Yes, I'll sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, gathered by the crystal sea. 647. 647. Soldiers of Christ arise, and put your armor on. Strong in the strength which God supplies. Strong in the strength which God supplies through his beloved Son. Strong in the Lord of hosts, and in his mighty power. come to you now with our hearts open, our minds open, our ears open, to learn better how to follow you through examples of the past, through the teachings here. Thank you for Steve and his openness and his ability to teach us in such a way to make your words come alive to us, to encourage us to follow you. Father, each day of our lives we come upon obstacles, we come upon things that may take us a different direction and help us to stay strong, help us to stay single-minded, following your Son, and always looking to Him, know, know that you want us to make that trip, do what is good and right in your sight. We as well want to do that, so we ask that you continue to guide us in such a way. Father, there are those who are ailing, either physically or mentally or spiritually, and we pray for them. Some are being tended to by other people, physicians, medical personnel. We pray for their wisdom and good decisions and bringing those back to the forefront. Each of us have our struggles as well. I pray that you guide us through those hard times. The path that we take, the path continue to lead us upon your way. Father, we pray for this country. It's going through a harsh time right now. It has been for it seems like quite some time. We pray that you guide our leaders, that they humble themselves so that you can dwell in their hearts and in their lives as they continue to serve this country in the form of leadership. Pray for our leaders here in this congregation, elders and deacons. Pray that you watch over them as well. We're thankful for the service that they give. We're thankful for their wanting to do what is good in life. So thankful for the families that back them up, wives and children. We know that sometimes can be hard travel to be willing to take. Father, as we continue tonight, we pray that we do have humble hearts. We pray that we do grow. Words that are spoken here are in wisdom and truth. And we pray that as well that you forgive us of any sins we may do lost through your Son's blood. We always have that hope with you in Him. And that you do actually trust yourself.
see. There we go. Okay, I was on the first time apparently, and then moved it to mute then. So anyway, all right, I think we're going now. Sorry. All is well. We like to shake it up a little bit here, keep everybody on their toes. So Nancy was just talking about, she was a little girl, grade school, when that happened. So December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked. Edwin Knapp, who is a member here, was at Pearl Harbor. He died a number of years ago, but I remember him talking some about that incident. There's still, any of you been to the Pearl Harbor Memorial there? Several of you have. Yeah. What is it about memorials? Why do we create things? And remember things that have painful, that remind us of painful times, like the Pearl Harbor Memorial.
But we don't want them to die, in fact.
Okay.
For us not to remember what they did.
Okay. So there's something we feel about the importance of remembering and honoring people who sacrificially died in those experiences, right? What else is some reasons? Yeah. Yeah, so there's something about keeping that in our mind that we don't forget about it. Never forget is often a phrase you'll find at things like that, to just say, that we need to keep that in our mind so it doesn't happen. So memorials were important in Scripture also. In fact, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 goes over some things that here he says, we've been talking about some incredible moments with Moses. We've been delivered with the plagues, and he delivers them, comes out of Egypt, passes the Red Sea, and the waters close in and destroy Pharaoh and his army. Those are great, fun, exciting stories of God's power and miracles. But there's also we're moving out of the Red Sea into the wilderness. And it's interesting, wilderness often follows those exciting highlight moments. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 1, "For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and passed through the sea. They were baptized in Moses in the cloud and the sea." So they passed through the Red Sea at that time. They all ate spiritual food, drank spiritual drink, drank from the spiritual rock that followed them. That rock was Christ. Nevertheless, most of them God was not pleased. They were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As is written, the people sat down and eat, drink, and rose up and play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 died a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. So Paul's remembering some of the events we're going to be talking about in the wilderness, where there were, grumbling, complaining going on. And he says we need to remember what happened so that we don't forget. He says in verse 11, "Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages have come. Therefore, let anyone who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall." So again, a reminder that these stories in Scripture serve as a memorial to us about what can happen for those people who do not live as they should, who don't trust in God as they should. We pick up the story now in Exodus chapter 14. Let's go to Exodus 14. Where we left off last week, where the people have kind of gone through the Red Sea, they come onto dry ground, and God closed the waters, destroyed them. And then chapter 15 we talked about is basically a retelling of the whole event, but poetically, more of a almost something to sing. And then at the end of chapter 15, verse 22, we see chapter 15, verse 22, "Then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea. They went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore, it was named Marah. We have a girl here named Mara. She's not very bitter at all, in fact. That seems like asking for trouble. You know, these kids, have you seen those kids that name them like Rebel, Maverick? It's like just asking for it, isn't it? But anyway, she's quite sweet, in fact, Judah and Carrie Davis's daughter. And so they, therefore, it was named Mara. At this point, the singing though stops and the grumbling begins. Verse 24, and the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? Now, how do you feel about these people griping? What are they griping about? Yeah, right now, specifically, what are they griping about? Water. You know, that is so overrated, water. Don't you think so? These kids today have to live. I remember when I was a kid, we could go without water for weeks. No, not really. We die without water. It's kind of a, it's kind of a fundamental thing here. It's an important thing, but it sets a tone that of grumbling. And it's interesting, in chapter 15, they've just been singing praises to God, and now earlier in the chapter, but it ends with the same people singing, now grumbling. James 3:11 talks about the mouth like a spring. He says, from a spring come both fresh water and salt water? No, both don't come from one. How is it that our mouth can be praising God one moment and cursing people the next? So, we have to ask a question. Wouldn't it just be, if you were designing the plan here, Israel comes out of bondage in Egypt, they were slaves, passed the Red Sea, waters close in on them, destroy them. He says, they have the covenant on Mount Sinai, gives them the commandments, and then why not just beam them right on in to the promised land? Interesting. So you've got to get out of a slavery mindset to a treasured people of God mindset, and sometimes changing mindsets are not the easiest thing to do. Wouldn't it be nice if you ever find yourself kind of in a bad mindset, like you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, right? And you know it, you're aware of it. You just can't just flip it over very well, can you? My wife has a code with me. If she says, Steve, how are you doing? That's code for, you're not doing very well. I've had it up to here, and so why don't we talk about what's going on? That's what really that means. Because she's usually in tune to my irritability before I am. But just because you know it doesn't mean, if somebody says, I think you've got a bad attitude. You say, oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. Now I feel wonderfully. Thank you. That's great. No, that's usually not how that works. It's difficult to turn that ship around. But they're going to have a lot of time that they need to experience some things. Deuteronomy chapter 8, when Moses, at the end of the whole adventure, and they come to the edge of the promised land, and the series of speeches by Moses to prepare Israel to enter the promised land, he reflects on one reason that God sent them through all this. He says it in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2. It says, you'll remember the whole day the Lord, that he led you those 40 years in the wilderness that he might humble you. Right? There was a sense of humility. Create a sense of dependence on God. Pride is a destructive thing. Yes? No, that's true. Right. Why did it become 40 years? So they go straight from Mount Sinai. They end up going to the promised land on the edge of it, and what happened? Sent the spies in, and they come back and say, everybody but Jacob and Caleb and Joshua say, everybody else says we can't do it. And And how long were the spies in the land looking at it? 40 days. So they get 1 year for every day they were over there, 40 years to wander in the wilderness. So right, that wasn't, that all the 40 years comes because of, but still because of ultimately what was the problem? A lack of faith and a distrust of what God can do. And so really, much of the whole wilderness is trying to learn a lesson that Egypt just learned about this God. They also have to learn a lesson about who this God is. And the reality is sometimes there's not an easy way to learn about who God is. There's not an easy way to learn dependence upon God. It really is one of those things often has to come through the fire. These people that are grumbling is a theme that we will see throughout the 40 years. What are some of the common denominators of why people grumble? All right, so there's something they want and they're not getting that. All right. Okay, so there's something that's unsettling, uncomfortable to them, that moves them out of their comfort zone, right? Yeah, and sometimes the squeaky wheel, right? That's just what we sometimes get things when we grumble about things, right? I think that, so grumbling, if you think about the very basics of why a person grumbles, there's something they think the way it should be, and it is not that way. And then they feel that really they feel it's unjust, that there really should be different than how it is. And often, grumbling comes when that ideal that we expect is interpreted from what we feel we deserve or what we've had. Now, how does that happen often with Israel? The good old days. Remember those good old days? And where were the good old days at, Gary? Where were they at in the good old days, Israel, before the slavery, bondage, the good old days in slavery?
They were getting food free.
Well, yeah, food, so much food, we get sick on the food. It was Golden Corral every day back at the...
That's what they thought.
Yes, back 10 years ago when I was 50 pounds heavier, we were driving by a Golden Corral the other day, and I thought, I remember the good old days, the Golden Corral days. We used to go there and just eat and eat, But no longer. So this thought of there's a danger of the good old days, where how good it was in the past, where we didn't have the problems we had in the past. I was with a group, and we were griping this morning, about AI and the internet and all the problems that come with that. And yes, there are certainly a lot of problems that come with that, but lust isn't new, is it? All the problems that are there have always been there, the roots of those things. Notice verse 4. There in verse, I don't even know where I left off. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me back up here. Verse 25 of chapter 15. They cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed them a log. So there's no water to drink. Showed them a log, threw it in the water, and the water became sweet. And the Lord made for them a statute and a rule, and he tested them there. So there you go. The answer: if you have some water, pour water, throw a log in it. What's the business with the whole log? Yeah,
Not really anything.
yeah, that's not some special sweet log or something, I guess. It's just, but why?
They had to see something.
Okay. Maybe gave them some practical, tangible thing. It'd take faith to actually do it, get the log, put it in, but I don't know. I don't have any great answers for that, but sometimes he does things like that. But it wasn't about the log, it was about the faith. Right, you take that log with you. I tell you, so you better do that. wherever you go. Well, that might miss the point too. There's going to be a lot of moments where they have to see past the log and think they can get consumed. But even remember the golden, the bronze serpent that they erected that held people. That ended up becoming an idol that they worship later, right? We have danger with missing this consumed with the sign rather than what the sign's pointing to. But that's later on. So. Right. It was all about what God was doing, but He kind of gives them some practical thing to help them. But He says, then He says to them, verse 26, if you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God and do that which is right in His eyes and give ear to the commandments and keep His statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, your healer. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water. How do you think that was like? 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. Yeah, I think I just kind of want to stay there. Sounds kind of nice. Just hang out here, but you got to move on. This is not the place of promise. So, chapter 16, they set out from Elim. All the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, and the 15th day of the second month they had departed from the land of Egypt, and the whole congregation of the people of Israel, what did they do? Grumbled against Moses and Aaron. And the people of Israel said, would that we have died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the, what does your version say? Golden Corral. That's in Gary's version. Remember, we used to go to Golden Corral back there. We ate bread to our fullness and meat, and yet you brought us to the wilderness to kill us with hunger. Boy, I can't imagine where I would be if I was hungry. I mean, I miss a meal and I'm like grumbling. Would this be a whole lot more comfortable if they're just grumping because their shoes aren't as good as they used to be, or the clothes are kind of itchy? No. But talking about this food and water, I mean, man, it's concerning. I don't think I would do any better than them. But there's a lot of this grumbling, or King James may say the murmuring that appears. But this is a constant theme going on here. And looking ahead, there he says, but anyway, so again, some of the constant themes that they're murmuring is they're often comparing and contrasting what they have now to what once was. That's a dangerous thing, isn't it? To live in that spot where we're comparing what was. What's the danger of that, Gary? Go ahead.
Well, what they did is they were remember the good things, but they did
Right.
not remember all the bad things that be displayed.
Right, and that's one of the problems, isn't it? We often distort that past. Those good old days are the things that were good, maybe a little better than they were, and we forget some of the bad things there to think about. And not that we shouldn't think about good things of our past. The problem is when we compare and contrast it. Yep. Yeah, it's not looking, and Paul just said in 1 Corinthians 10, you need to look back, but for the purpose of moving forward. If you're just doing it to just gripe and complain about things we could just sit around, let's all just sit around one night and just gripe about things. Wouldn't that be fun? Anybody got things they could gripe about? Got some aches, physical issues you can gripe about? PA system, oh my goodness, we could gripe about that. Video won't work. We'll just tell Tyler all about our problems with well, we just found out today we could have it all fixed for $50,000. Anybody wants to write a check, we'll take care of that right now. There you go. But anyway, give you something else to gripe about. Oh, yes. But it's easy when you get around a group of people and the griping starts. It's just free for all, right? It's easy to get caught up in that. But yet, that in itself, if that's an end in itself, there's nothing productive about that, is it? Verse 4, chapter 16, then the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go up and gather a day's portion for them. And why just the day's portion? Right, and why?
He told them to one day.
But why is that? To trust God. He's going to provide. There will be bread tomorrow. Right? It'll be here. This is a key, really a key, is God could have made all this a lot easier. Yeah. But it's just to trust in Him that He will provide for you. Right. Yeah, and so this maybe not a short-term memory of what God has just done for them, the plagues, the miracles He just did, over unrealistic comparisons to what was and what is now, right? That this creates quite a concoction. Throw in some fear that you're not going to be okay. That can be a very destructive combination. Verse 13, chapter 16. In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp, and the morning dew lay on the ground of the camp. And when the dew had gone up on the face of the wilderness, was a fine flake thing, fine as frost on the ground. And when the people of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" And what's the Hebrew word for that? What is it? Manna. Manach in Hebrew is, what is that? It's like that whatchamacallit candy bar that they used to make. What is that? No, they called the candy bar was called whatchamacallit. Do you remember that? Yours?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah. For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It's bread that the Lord has given you to eat." So that would have been interesting to try some of that. But so things are going well. They got enough food. So what would you expect? More griping. In fact, later on, Numbers chapter 11, verse 5, the people are there and they're saying, there's nothing here around except this manna to look at. So they're getting sick and tired of looking at it. So again, now back to chapter 17, verse 1. All the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by the stages, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Quarrel, is there a difference between quarrel? It's a different word, quarrel and grumbling. What's the difference between quarreling and grumbling? Yeah, that's kind of, we think of quarreling like that's going on between people. I could just grumble by myself, but I generally quarrel with other people. So it's magnifying and it's impacting the unity of the people, and especially directed at good old Moses. Verse 17 continues, verse 2, the second part of Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" There was a joke I heard today of somebody that said, somebody kind of expressed themselves in a very strong manner against something, and somebody said, "I heard that when people express themselves in a very dramatic way, there's something going on personally in their own life. You want to tell me something about what just happened, what's going on with you?" But that's true, right? Generally, people who are grumbling and complaining, and that's just, some people, that's just their nature. There's some people that think that's a spiritual gift, that gift of grumbling. And those people, they're always grumbling. But there's other people at times, it's unusual to them, and they're just, there's something going on. That's what my wife would say, "How are you doing? Maybe you need to go outside for a while," that kind of thing. Amy would tell the boys, "Run to the fence and back." They would be wrestling, So if neighbors said, "I just saw some boys like in their underwear running to the fence out in the pasture. What's going on?" No, we called the police on them or anything. She'd just say, "Get out of the house now, run." So maybe that's what we need to do once in a while. Go for a run. But so Moses is saying, "Well, hey, he's getting sick and tired of it himself, and So, and when we think of grumbling, I mean, our reaction often when people are, but what would you think God's reaction is? Often we think that there's this judgment, but that's actually not as common as, like in chapter 17, verse 6, he says, Moses, strike the rock. The water will come out of it. And he did it. I mean, God often, he responds to that. No meat. God gives them meat. I mean, most of the time it's not bring the hammer, it's give them something. I mean, there's some mercy, there's compassion in that. Of course, the whole rock thing we'll get to a little bit later. But I want to wrap up things this evening with just talking about the danger of grumbling and complaining. Because there are plenty of things to grumble and complain about today, aren't there? You don't have to look very far to find justification for that. The way the world is, the way things are going. A few thoughts about some concoctions for ingredients for ungodly grumbling. One is I think that sometimes when we see a perfect past, in our memory, we think back of when everything was just perfect. When there were never any problems. I'm sure, Mr. Maples, when there were, how many people did you say when you were a kid were in Nixa? A population of 97 people in Nixa, Missouri. I'm sure things were perfect, though, back then, and when there were just 97 people. Everybody did the right thing. They all talked well, treated each other great. Nobody made any mistakes. Well, maybe 96 people, but there was always one guy, right? No. But the reality is, certainly there was a simpler time, and people probably generally were more honest and decent in how they treated each other, especially smaller communities where you're really dependent upon each other. Not saying it's exactly the same, but there would have been struggles. There would have been marriage problems. There would have been people, making bad decisions, alcohol problems, lots of things, addictions back then, as there are today. And it doesn't help when we make an unrealistic, perfect past in our mind. When everything was great, when the church didn't have any problems, when everything was happy, and government, everybody, and also I think that's interesting today when I hear people talking about the government. I can't believe the government today. Nobody gets along. Or you read some of the debates of people back, years ago in the United States and what they would say to each other and how they would attack each other, right? I mean, it's always been political anger and strong feelings and things like that. And again, I'm not saying things are not necessarily, but every generation looks upon the next thinking, well, this one's just gone to pot. It's all flushed down the toilet, right? We had it all together, but this next one, it's horrible. And each generation comes to think that. Having a perfect past in our mind that we compare the present to doesn't help. It's not being realistic about things and can just foster grumbling and complaining. Second doesn't help is when we look at all we fixate is on the problems today. I hear people, young people today, they're so messed up, they don't know how to work, they don't know this, they don't know that. Yes, there are lots of problems, of course, but there's also some things about young people that there's a spirituality about them. There's a desire to know, I think, God that we're seeing a lot within younger people today. That's a prayer life. There's also some very noble, good things that are there today. If we look for them, we can see that. Another problem is when a perfect past, a present problem that's just all the problems we have today, but also I would call it a fantastic future, where it would all be, or I would call it more of a fearful future. That might be more accurate. We're just constantly afraid of what's coming. That everything's doomed. It's not going to get any better. And there's no way out. No hope. That's not helpful either. If we truly believe that God is in control, we truly believe He's going to keep His promises, He's going to redeem all things. Right? If we believe Him, that's going to happen. So, Exodus chapter 17, verse 7, He called that place where that water was bitter, Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people, because they had tested the Lord and said, is the Lord among us or not? Massah means temptation in Hebrew. Meribah means strife and confrontation. He said, I want this to be a place you remember. I want it to be a place when you remember when you came to where there was bitter water, and I made it sweet. Because it won't be the last time you're going to come to a place when all you can taste is bitterness. And I want you to remember, I can make it sweet even with just a log you throw in the water. If I can do that with a piece of wood, right, through you, imagine what else I could do. And so, maybe instead of looking to the past as this perfect past, maybe look to the past but to learn from it. There was good, but there was bad. What can I learn from the past? And those mistakes and failures are there that I don't repeat it in the future. Why don't I take a moment to look around and count the blessings? What are some good things happening? What are some good things happening in people's lives I see around us? I mean, one thing about this young generation, they love service projects. They love to do things and that special caring about people in need. That's a huge thing, it seems, that very pressed upon many young. That's a good thing. What are some other good things happening in the world today? And then when I think about the future, rather than just what could be, the fear potential, worrying about tomorrow, why don't I look forward to tomorrow? When I know the end result, where it's going to be. I may not know what's happening between here and there, but I know the end game. And it is very bright. Anybody have any final comments or thoughts? Whatever you're looking for, yeah, that was good. If you didn't hear that, it was a good story. The buzzard that just finds the death and the hummingbird that finds the flowers. And you find what you're drawn to. And what you're drawn to is what feeds you. And if you find that you feed off death, then you're going to find it, and that's going to give you a temporary, satisfaction. But it's good. Anybody else have any final thoughts or comments here? All right.
There's a few that need to take the Lord's Supper. Is there anyone? Is there anyone that needs to take that doesn't have supplies? Reading in Luke 22, starting in verse 17. After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, "Take this and divide it among you, for I tell you, I will not drink it again with the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes." And he took the bread and gave thanks and broke it, and he gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "The cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." Father, we thank you for Jesus and that sacrifice that he made for us and the body that was broken. We can remember that and thank you for that sacrifice that gives us the promise of eternity. In Jesus' name. Father, we thank you for Jesus and the blood that was shed that we know can wash away our sins. Help us this time to remember that sacrifice and be forever grateful for that. Thank you for the promise of eternal life with you. In Jesus' name. Just a few announcements before we're dismissed. members, don't forget to sign up on the bulletin board out here in the hall to have your photo updated if you haven't done that. And then the ladies' Christmas luncheon is Tuesday at 11:30. Again, on the bulletin board, more information about details for that. There's several sick, but there's a few. I mentioned this morning, there's a few I want to have. We keep in prayers this week. Diane Davis will have surgery Wednesday. Whitey Corey had surgery Friday to repair hernia, so he recovered from that. Tom Barnett is scheduled to have surgery tomorrow to remove some lymph nodes. And then my son Adam has an MRI to check the brain mass that they found about 6 months ago. This is to determine whether they need to operate or if it's not growing and everything can stay the way it is. Keep that in prayers. And all those others we can mention. Carol Barton, she's a doctor on the 19th. We dispatched options for her heart problems. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for this day and this time that we can come and gather as a family. And thank you for this church that we can come to and fellowship with one another, spend time in your word, growing in our faith. Be with those that are sick and struggling, those that are recovering from surgery, April Harris, Joe Snow, Ron Green. Be with those that are facing surgeries, Diane, Adam, Tom. Be with any other sick that we may or may not know of that we didn't mention here, that they can have comfort, healing in you. Be with us as we go out from this place. That you keep us from harm. Help us to study and spend time in your word this week, that we can continue to grow and reach out to those around us and show them the love that is Jesus. Be with us through the week. We can be faithful servants to you. Forgive us our sins. In Jesus' name, amen.